In September, American drones blew up boats in the Caribbean. No warning, no trial, no headline. Washington said it was a war on drugs, but the boats were not on cocaine routes, and in 2 weeks, a nuclear aircraft carrier was stationed near Venezuela. This is not fighting trafficking, this is preparation for war, and no one is talking about it.
Because toppling Maduro might be the easiest part. The hard part is surviving the vacuum that will come once the regime falls. A vacuum armed to the teeth, fueled by 2 decades of chaos, corruption, and oil turned into a political weapon. This is the kind of conflict that redefines countries, that breaks borders, that reshapes alliances, and that when it's over, leaves an entire hemisphere unrecognizable. Today, we're going to dig into each of these layers. How this silent war began, who benefits from it, who loses, and why this could be the most explosive conflict in the Americas since the invasion of Panama, with consequences that could ripple across the entire continent. You are in the strategic zone, and this is your official report. It all started with boats exploding. Boats is common in the Caribbean as old cars on a busy street. Nothing special, nothing unusual. And according to Trump, they were full of terrorists and dangerous drug traffickers. A new offensive to stop drugs from reaching the U.S. coast. But let's be honest, that explanation doesn't hold up. If you want to fight cocaine, you target Colombia, Peru, Bolivia, and above all, Mexico. You don't go after the Venezuelan Caribbean, because that's not the source. That's not the main route. That's not the problem. So why did the drones go there? The government claimed it was anti-trafficking operations. But that narrative didn't last long. By October, it was clear something much deeper was going on. The United States had quietly shifted its strategic focus to the Caribbean. And in that package came covert operations, military movements, and diplomatic pressure. It was the kind of shift that doesn't happen by accident. It doesn't happen by miscalculation. And it definitely doesn't happen to chase wooden boats. That movement had another target. A target with a flag. A target with oil. A target called Venezuela.
Oil.
It's impossible to talk about Venezuela without talking about oil. The country holds the largest proven reserves in the world, even larger than Saudi Arabia's, and this monumental wealth has paradoxically turned into a historical curse. For decades, the country traded barrels for alliances, first with Moscow, then with Beijing. Each Venezuelan government believed oil would be enough to buy protection, time, and power. But the problem with oil is simple. It runs out, and in Venezuela it's running out faster than it should. Not because of a lack of reserves, but because of a lack of capacity. The sector is collapsing, the machines don't work, the refineries have lost workers, maintenance and spare parts. And with the decline of oil came the decline of power. Today Venezuela is no longer the unbeatable geopolitical player it once was. But that doesn't mean it's no longer important. On the contrary, in the global chessboard, Venezuela has become the last Russian and Chinese stronghold in the Western Hemisphere. It's a symbol, a showcase, a demonstration that the world no longer belongs solely to the United States. Washington knows it, Moscow knows it, Beijing knows it, and that's why Venezuela matters, not for what it is today, but for what it represents. Something is happening in the Caribbean right now. Something few have noticed. The United States didn't just send ships. They restructured the entire military command in the region. The head of SOUTHCOM was replaced 2 years ahead of schedule. An unusual move. It almost never happens without a reason. And when it does, it's because someone at the top wants a change in strategy. Then came the reinforcement. Over 10,000 soldiers, Marines and sailors deployed to the Caribbean. Warships positioned in strategic formation. The aircraft carrier Gerald R, the crown jewel of the U.S. Navy, stationed near the Venezuelan coast. All of it under a flimsy pretext, operations against cartels. But cartels don't require aircraft carriers. Cartels don't call for B-52s landing in Puerto Rico. Cartels don't pressure the Pentagon to reactivate Cold War-era bases. This is the kind of military power used for regime change. This is the kind of of military power that turns a silent war into an inevitable one. Trump isn't hiding it anymore. He authorized covert operations inside Venezuela. And when that kind of authorization is given, it means the United States feels comfortable acting in the shadows, without Congress, without the UN, without the Caracas claims to have captured agents backed by the CIA preparing a false flag attack on American ships. This attack, later blamed on Maduro, would have served as the trigger for a formal intervention. Is it true? It's hard to know. Governments at war lie, all of them. But here's the important point. The mere fact that this claim is believable shows just how far the United States is willing to go. And a week later, another episode surfaced. The FBI tried to bribe Maduro's private pilot, $50 million for the Venezuelan president's head. A plot straight out of a Cold War thriller. It failed, but failures shift tactics. And when tactics change, conflicts stop being silent. On paper, the Venezuelan armed forces look unexpected. Russian Su-30 fighter jets, American F-16s inherited from earlier deals, drones, a sizable navy, armored infantry. But in practice, all of that is broken. The planes have no spare parts. The bases lack maintenance. The chain of command is compromised by corruption, and half the equipment is more for parades than for combat. What's left is just for show. Venezuela can't sustain a conventional war against an American aircraft carrier. That wouldn't be a war. It would be a demolition. And yet, that doesn't mean it would be easy, because the real resistance isn't in the barracks. It's in the streets. Neither Moscow nor Beijing will go to war directly for the Venezuelans, but that doesn't mean they'll stay out of it. Russia has sent advisors, cargo planes, and possibly Wagner Group fighters. Not enough to win the war, but enough to make it harder, to raise the political cost, to slow Washington down, to turn every American victory into a future problem. China, on the other hand, thinks differently. It doesn't send soldiers. It sends contracts, debt, infrastructure. Dependency. Venezuela owes China billions, and Beijing doesn't like losing investments. This conflict isn't just military, it's economic, it's about energy, it's diplomatic, and behind it all is the struggle for critical minerals. Lithium, uranium, copper, gold. The US wants to regain regional control. China wants to keep its foothold. Russia wants to provoke. No one wants to lose. And when no one wants to lose, wars happen. Brazil is the silent but vital piece on this border. If Venezuela collapses, millions could cross the borders. If the conflict escalates, Brazil becomes a humanitarian corridor. If the regime falls, factions could flee into Roraima, Amazonas, and Pará. This isn't speculation. It already happened in Syria, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Libya. When a country collapses, it doesn't fall alone. It brings its neighbors down with it. Brazil therefore needs to take a stance, and every choice has consequences. If it supports the US, it becomes part of the conflict. If it stays neutral, it risks chaos at the borders. If it negotiates with the regime, it angers Washington. It's a thankless position, but an unavoidable one. Scenario 1. Lightning War. The U.S. bombs Venezuelan bases, destroys military infrastructure, and topples Maduro within weeks. It sounds simple, but it creates a vacuum, and the vacuum creates chaos. Scenario 2. Prolonged hybrid war. Surgical strikes, sabotage, economic blockades, drones, covert operations. No official announcements, just gradual destruction until the regime collapses from within. This is the most likely scenario. Scenario 3. The Afghanistan of the Americas. The government falls, but gangs, militias, and factions fight for control of the resources. The country turns into a mosaic of war zones. The US tries to stabilize, but gets bogged down. It's the worst-case scenario and the easiest one to happen. Here's the part that no one likes to talk about. What if the US wins? If Maduro falls, what comes next? Who governs? Who controls the oil? Who disarms the militias? Who rebuilds the refineries? Who pays the debt to China? Who stops factions from becoming new cartels? Who handles the migration? Who keeps Russia from creating chaos in retaliation? This is the kind of victory that only looks like a victory in the first few days. Then it reveals itself as a Pandora's box. The United States is already at war with Venezuela, not officially, not declared, but at war. The question now isn't if the war will escalate, it's when, and more importantly, how does it end? Because in the end, power doesn't make anyone wise. It only amplifies mistakes. And when superpowers make mistakes, entire continents pay the price. If you enjoyed this analysis and want more content like this, deep, detailed, and uncovering what's really happening behind the headlines, leave a like, share, and subscribe to the channel. It really helps our work and ensures you won't miss the next chapters of this story, which is far from over. Thanks for your time and see you next time.